So, we are finally here, right at the end of this insane year, which has been horrible for so many reasons, but great because, for me, it got me back into reading. I set a goal at the beginning of the year to read 12 books. That was my original goal, and that was only because V pushed me to. I was going to set way fewer because I was so worried I was going to disappoint myself. And then that was done by April. And I was like, okay, what next goal can I set? And I set 50 books. And that's been my goal ever since. And I'm so close. And it's been a bit of a trial. I didn't really start properly reading until mid-March. I started off the year, and not until February, when I read Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski, the first of the Witcher books. I hope I said that name correctly. And from there was a big pause, and then I read pretty steadily, but then with exams, I stopped here and there. It took me a month to get through Fear and Trembling by Soren Kierkegaard, and I'm now in the final reaches of reaching that 50. And for me, I'm taking it seriously in that I have strict rules, which, it's not judging anyone else, but for me, anything else, it feels like I'm cheating. I don't count any audiobooks, not that I listen to them very often, but if I did include them, I'd be done at this point. I do not want to just read a bunch of tiny books just to get there, which are mainly, it's only two really, where I don't want to just read books that just to get me there, books I'm not interested in, books that are short. And if I'm just trying to read to get to that number, it's not in the spirit of it. I want to have read enough throughout the year to deserve the number I have at the end, and not have worked or designed the schedule to hit a number, which is, because then it's kind of meaningless. And now I turn to my books, 3 of which are very, very tiny. The first one, because I did for my birthday get a box set of these 50 modern classics, and I was very tempted. I had 5 books left to read. I had just finished Lord of the Rings 2 Towers, which took me a while because it's a big book. My edition's very tall with not very big font, and it was a massively enjoyable experience, but it was a bit of a fantasy epic. So the reason I read a small book was because I just got a bunch of them, which I hadn't touched yet, and because I just read a fantasy epic. And so I read the one that jumped out to me most, number 1 in this series, Martin Luther King Jr.'s Letter from Birmingham Jail, which is an incredible read. And I'm not going into these in too much detail because this is just more wrapping up what I'm going to read. It's more of a TBR for the reading rush rather than a recap, though there will be a recap at the beginning of next year, something like that. Brilliant book, brilliant letter, so eloquent. His Dr. King's thinking is just unrivaled, and it really did show me how censored I think the modern view of Martin Luther King is as this cuddly teddy bear who just wanted peace and love, when whilst he wanted justice and he wanted fairness, and he was willing to cause tension and not chaos, but he was willing to cause inconvenience and tension for things to happen. And he was a very driven political figure, and some people called him an extremist. And I think it has become a bit of an insult to him to think of him as just this guy who stood around saying everyone should be nice, because that's just not how it is. And the unfortunate thing is how true his letter still is about the movement today, and it's the exact same logic used by the current Black Lives Matter movement. And there are so many people who think they can be anti-Black Lives Matter but be pro-Martin Luther King because they think that they're operating under different rationales. Anyone who thinks that, have a read of this letter and see if you agree afterwards. Next, John Steinbeck, The Vigilante. So, I loved Of Mice and Men. I read it in high school before I had to do it for school, which is probably the only reason I like it compared to a lot of people who just had to read it. And I haven't read anything else. I haven't read East of Eden or Grapes of Wrath, though I do have Grapes of Wrath on my shelf. And I saw this and I was like, oh, Steinbeck, I should read some more of his. And it contains a few short stories, 2 of which I liked, 1 of which I didn't get. And it was a fun time. And after this book, that was when I was like, yeah, this one was so impactful and so important, it didn't feel like cheating. This one didn't feel like cheating either because I was trying to go along with the same vein, but at the end of it, I just felt dissatisfied, and I didn't feel like I'd read a book or a big, meaningful work. And so I did a bit of a left turn and read the 200, it's only 200 pages, but Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Hunter S. Thompson, Jesus Christ, man. This book is insane, because Hunter S. Thompson is insane, and whilst it's all gonzo journalism, which is something I had to read multiple articles about to understand what the hell that was, where it's a roman à clef. It's based on some very real events, some completely made up events, put through an entirely different lens, so that it's a satire of everything to do with the counterculture movement in the 60s, and the Nixon administration, and the American dream, all through the story of a drug-addled, crazy weekend a journalist spends in Vegas. And it was the first time I've ever had an inkling of why the 60s ended the way they did. Because, you know, as an Australian kid born in the 90s, all you see is, the 60s were everyone in fields making love and having fun with their hair down, and then the 70s was Nixon in Vietnam, and everything got back to being sensible. But you never really understand what happened, and what happened was that shit went wild. And this book just gives a bit of an explanation into that, and it's very, very interesting, and something I want to read more about. And as for the other two, I have not read them. My justification, and I know no one watching this probably cares, but I feel I need to justify it. The reason I'm going to the tiny Nietzsche book is because I started writing kind of based off this. This book is very nihilistic, and I started writing a little thing based off of this. Not based off this, inspired by Fear and Loathing, where I mentioned a few nihilists and nihilism, and I was like, I should read some nihilists. If only I had some Nietzsche. And I was like, I've got that little black book. So it's a complete coincidence, and no one can judge me for reading tiny books to get to the number. Then finally, The Housekeeper and the Professor. This is I'm squeezing it right in at the end of the year. I feel very guilty because V has lent me a ton of books and I haven't read any of them. They have been sitting in my shelf for ages and I haven't touched them, and I need to do better, and this is what I'm trying to do better. It's only 100 and something pages. I don't think it quite breaks 200 pages, so it's not a massive book, but it's a full-fledged novel, and it should be a good way to end out the year. But yeah, this is my second half of December TBR. I'm not calling this video TBR because it really is just a rush to the finish line to try to get everything read. But I'm not having to push myself because I've missed reading so much with exams and everything. And so I'm just going to have an enjoyable month and round out the year. And hopefully, if everything goes to plan, I'll hit my goal and hopefully even exceed it. Though I have 14 days. I have 2 weeks to read 2 books. So that should be fine. But there's going to be holiday stuff and trips and planning. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully I'll be able to talk to you guys in the new year about how happy I am to reach 50 books, and I'll give, I think in my next video, I'm going to give a full recap of just what I read. And then after that, I have missed videos so much that there are multiple books that I want to do full-on book chats on. Even some I want to do half book chats on, where I might splice the videos together or just do some mini videos. So yeah, plenty to come. And hopefully this is enough to whet everyone's appetite whilst I'm away, and then I'm going to come back and really get into it. So thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Thanks. Bye.